The Phantom Tomorrow, Black Veil Bride's most recent album and one of my personal favorite albums of all time. Probably in the range of 10 to 15th favorite ever. And honestly, after Veil, I wasn't super excited for what the band had next, but The Phantom Tomorrow totally redeems them, puts them back into my top bands of all time. So great to see the band back together after the whole Veil situation where they pretty much broke up. Andy went solo, bunch of things happened, but they came back and were able to piece together this absolute masterclass in rock music. Now, I should probably mention before I start the video that before I posted my video on Veil a few weeks ago, I had not posted a video in like 6 months. So going forward, instead of reading off of a script like my old videos did, I'm going to be reading off of just notes and improvising most of what I say in the videos. So it takes a lot less time, and I just don't have the time to write scripts anymore. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video. Enjoy. Coming in at last place, unfortunately, is Fall Eternal. Now, on the previous screen, you may have noticed that I put a little star by the rating of the song, and that basically means that at the right time, this song can jump way up the ranking. And in this case, it's because it is the album closer. It has a lot of emotion in it, and if you're binging the whole album and you finish it off with this, it hits harder than it would as if it were just in a playlist or something, obviously. The lyrics are honestly beautiful. Some of my favorite on the album may be my favorite, but they are a little bit repetitive. Like all the choruses are basically the exact same, both lyrically, of course, and sonically. Even the last chorus doesn't bring much to the table sonically compared to the previous two, at least not until after the chorus, which the post chorus of the last chorus, like the ending of the song, I actually really like. It's a great way to end off the album, but I wish there was a little bit more to that chorus. Despite all that, Fall Eternal still works very well as this album's closer. Its ambience or orchestral sounds are used really well. They fit really well with the rest of the song, especially the violin from Jinx, which we always love. The bridge also is another kind of disappointing point for me. It's good, but I wish it had a little bit more to it, some more build up, and the transition from the bridge to the chorus is just very lackluster. They could have added a little bit more in there. The violin's nice, but maybe put in a little bit more instrumentals, maybe some drums, maybe something to give it a little more oomph to transition into the last chorus in a way that actually works. But unfortunately, they did not do that. But I think that's made up for by the last about 50-45 seconds of the song, where you get a little callback to Lost It All, where you have the person singing in the background, which it's not originally from Lost It All, it's from Pink Floyd, but I'm going to say Lost It All for the purpose of this video. And that's a really nice callback. There's a lot of parallels in this album and Wretched and Divine, which is really cool, and that is probably my favorite one, honestly. And then I do like how it ends with all the instrumentals calming back down. You get some violin, and you get that kind of clock ticking sound effect, the mysterious ticking noise in the background, which is a really cool way to end it. And another parallel to Wretched and Divine is that this album ends on a note of defeat, where Wretched and Divine ended with this big victorious winning the war thing for the rebels. The Phantom Tomorrow ends with defeat for the Phantom Tomorrow, which is a little bit sad, but I do think it was a cool way to end it. Just as how a lot of old Shakespearean tragedies, obviously they're tragedies, they end with sadness. I think this was done really well. Coming in at number 9 is Blackbird. This is one that I have flip flopped a lot on over the years. I think it at one point it was at like number 7 or 6 on my list, but over time it's just lost a lot of that replay value for me. It's definitely a good solid song, but it's not really much more than that. You know, you have some nice melodies, you have some really nice guitar and drum work, but none of it really jumps out at me in a way that makes me say wow, like a lot of these other songs do. But honestly, this would be much higher than ninth place on most albums. It's just because The Phantom Tomorrow is such an amazing album, one of my favorites. Another good thing that Blackbird has is lyrics. I think these are some of the best lyrics again on the album, especially the chorus. The one time in my life I've played D&D, I modeled my character after Blackbird, and my whole thing was just quoting lyrics from the chorus of this song, which my friends thought was funny. It really wasn't, but anyway, tangent over. The only thing that I really have to mention about this song is the solo, which is probably my favorite part. maybe tied with the chorus. It gives some really cool Heaven's Calling solo vibes, but obviously a lot better. Heaven's Calling was a little bit, unkempt, pretty raw, but Blackbird executes it a lot better with that kind of guitar, that weird guitar style in that solo. And not just the guitar is great, the violin in the vocal section, the bridge especially, throughout the whole song it's good, but in the bridge and the transition to the last chorus, the violin work is amazing. Again, Jinx, this is probably his best album performance in terms of violin. It's just so consistent throughout the entire record. But honestly, there's not much more to say about Blackbird. It's just a very accessible, pleasant song that is very nice to listen to. Number 8, Crimson Skies. This is another one that has moved around my ranking a lot. I believe at one point I might have even had it in last place, but I have decided to put it here at number 8, just ahead of Blackbird, barely. They flip flopped a lot, but I decided to put this ahead because of the heavy sections. There's a much higher ceiling than Blackbird. While most of Crimson Skies is worse than Blackbird, the heavy sections in the bridge and the outro are by far the best thing on either of those songs, and I think that's why it's up here. The lighter sections, such as the chorus, well, that is the really only light section, kind of balances out the song in a bad way. I don't love how the chorus goes so much lighter. It almost gives some Christian music vibes just with the melody and the sound, even though the chorus is very much not Christian. I would say, if anything, it's atheist or anti-theist. I know Black Veil is not an anti-theist band, but some of the lyrics in this chorus definitely give that vibe, which is not a big deal. I don't really care, but I think the verses are also a really nice part of this song. I love how they keep everything very hyped, very high energy, especially with the guitar in the background and the drums. CC does amazing in this song, one of his best performances on the record, and the guitar in the verses kind of going the dun, 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 which is kind of giving some BVB4 vibes, the self-titled album, which is awesome. Another awesome record that I posted a video on a few months ago if you want to check it out. As I mentioned, the chorus is a little disappointing. Mostly the sound is a little bit weird. It's probably the weakest of the singles for that reason. I think it's probably the worst, one of the worst choruses on the album, maybe even the worst, but still, those heavy sections really bring it up. The screaming in those sections is awesome. It's a little disappointing that there wasn't much screaming in this album, but Crimson Skies is one of the few songs where there is, and I think it's done really well. And I always love to hear Black Veil Bride screaming. Another part of the song that I really like is the guitar solo in the bridge. Being the track in the album where is basically the fight scene between the Phantom Tomorrow and whatever they're fighting against, this guitar solo to me embodies that fighting spirit. It could be used in the background of a big war scene in a movie if there was an adaptation of the album, which would be really cool. I think that's really nice solo. It's very high energy, kind of hopeful, but at the same time like still dangerous, really intense, and I really like that about it. The gang vocals right before that, and I guess after that in the end as well, are really nice, really nicely used. There's a lot of gang vocals on Set the World on Fire, and they didn't really do much gang vocals since Wretched and Divine until now, if I can remember correctly. I think gang vocals were used really well in Crimson Skies, and that's something that I really like to see, especially because of that whole we're fighting with an army kind of thing that the song has going on in the story. And lastly, I'd like to mention the ending, which brings back the heaviness from the bridge with the screaming and the really cool guitar riff. It's just a great way to transition into the next track on the album, Kill the Hero, which is not the next on this list, but in the album it is chronologically next. But yeah, I think Crimson Skies is a very solid song. A lot of great things going for it, except for the chorus. Again, a little disappointing, but other than that, the song is really great. All right, number 7 is Born Again. For a while, I actually had Born Again at a 7.5 out of 10, but I recently put it up to an 8 just because it's grown on me a little bit since I stopped listening to Black Veil as much. And honestly, I think this is basically just a lighter version of Crimson Skies, but it's better in a way. I think mostly because the worst sections aren't really bad compared to the chorus of Crimson Skies, which isn't bad either, don't get me wrong. But I think Born Again is a much more consistent song in quality. The parts fit together a lot better. It's a lot less peaks and valleys. It's more just a nice plateau where everything's pretty consistent. And that all starts with the riff at the beginning. And I think that part is really awesome. It uses the guitar, of course, but also some electronic elements, which Black Veil experimented a lot with this record that I really like. The verses are a little bit disappointing. They're a little slow and kind of forgettable, but the pre chorus is really nice. I like how all the instrumentals come up, the vocals get higher pitched, and it's a great way to lead into the chorus, which is slightly better than Crimson Sky's chorus. Actually, maybe not slightly. It's a solid chorus to go along with the rest of the song. I think it fits a lot better than Crimson Skies did. I like how the guitars in the chorus sound happy, and they surprisingly work very well, whereas in Crimson Skies they didn't so much. But I would say the bridge is still the best part. Mostly the solo, which is pretty much the only part of the bridge I actually like. The vocal part of the bridge is pretty forgettable and probably the worst part of the song, but the solo is really nice. It kind of brings some of that melody in and makes everything come full circle again, which I really like in songs most of the time. And then after that amazing solo is the last chorus, and I really like the transition into that chorus. Everything slows down for a sec, and then you bring in the chorus full throttle again, which is generally a thing I really like again. I just think Born Again is a very good, catchy song. It's a slight improvement over Crimson Skies. Number six is Kill the Hero. Kill the Hero is one of the catchier songs in the album, in my opinion. Despite not being released as a single, it definitely has that single energy. It has very nice melodies, very nice guitar, amazing vocals. The vocal harmonies are some of the best on the record, except for the songs at the very top of the list, which you'll see soon. And I think Kill the Hero is so interesting because it uses a lot of really cool elements such as bells. It uses some really interesting melodies that I feel like we're not used to seeing from Black Veil, especially in the verses. You know that lyric right turns to wrong turns to right in the pring chorus? That melody is something that I feel like would fit in more of a Disney musical or something like that, not a metal song. But Kill the Hero does use all of these different styles and elements really, really well. As I said, all of those things together make for a super epic track, which, considering its place on the album right before Fall Eternal after Crimson Skies, is perfect. It's kind of the hero's last hurrah, in this case, is Blackbird's last hurrah before inevitably being cast into the open grave like he is in Fall Eternal. I think at the end of the song, where after the last chorus, the lyrics say, "Nothing's left, so kill the hero," when all the guitars come back in and the drums start blast beats, CC goes insane. I think that's his last like final stand before he's inevitably cast down into the grave, which is a really really cool addition. I'm not sure if that's what it was meant to be, but that's what I see. But now onto the musical specifics of the song. I'd say the things that jump out to me most are the chorus and the bridge, especially the guitar solo. The chorus is extremely catchy, the harmonies are used amazingly, and everything in them just kind of goes together to make for this super epic chorus that again works perfectly in its place in the album. And the bridge, unlike a lot of Black Veil bridges, actually has really nice vocal parts and a really nice guitar solo. Usually it's one or the other, but in this case it's really both. They're both used really well. My favorite part of the track is, of course, the guitar solo, like it is most of the time. And to add to that, the bridge actually completes a trifecta with an amazing transition back into the last chorus with the O's and the guitar coming back in. It's just amazing all around. One of the most solid bridges on the album for sure. And then, of course, the last chorus comes in, which is extremely climactic, a great lead in to Fall Eternal, like I mentioned earlier. The final line, "Nothing's left, so kill the hero," lyrically works amazing as a transition into the closer. Alright, number five, another single, it is Torch. Torch was very close to being number six, but I decided to put it above Kill the Hero just because it's a little bit more catchy and makes even better use of the electronic sounds. This is probably one of the most electronically focused tracks on the record, if not the most. Even though there's a lot of electronic stuff, the violin and the drums also play a big part. Surprisingly, the guitars are not really a major part of the song, which is a Black Veil staple. I think it's really cool that the band decided to experiment with a lot of different mediums in this album, the electronic stuff being one of them, and also including a lot more violin than usual. I think Torch is a great example of how they combine some of those different elements in a way that they're not used to doing and kind of stepping out of their comfort zone a little bit. The lyrics as well are really cool. Of course, they're part of the story of the Phantom Tomorrow, but they definitely still apply to the real world. The lyric, will you burn down when I ignite the torch? Basically saying, will you fail or fold when I show everybody what you really are or what you really do, is really cool. It applies to a lot of things in the real world, and I love how they build that parallel there. The verses are probably the weakest part of the song sonically, but that's pretty normal. The verses aren't meant to be insane. Except for the pre chorus on the second verse, deep inside the sun, my words become a gun. That part is really nice to lead into the second chorus. And speaking of, the chorus is extremely catchy, one of the best parts of the song. It's very accessible, one of Black Veil's catchiest choruses ever, in my opinion. And the background instrumentals and the vocals both synergize amazingly to make this really, really nice chorus that even metal haters could even listen to. Where metal haters would definitely not be able to listen to is the bridge. I actually quite like the bridge being a metalhead, but I just wish it had a little bit more to it. It's just a guitar solo, and not an incredibly memorable one at that. It kind of just brings everything up in intensity a little bit before going back into the chorus. But the transition into the last chorus is really nice. They slow everything down to prepare for the last chorus and is climactic as ever. Where I want to focus, though, probably my favorite part of this song, is the ending, specifically the last 30 seconds after the last chorus kind of finishes the main part of it, where you have the gang vocals coming into the background, and especially the part that makes this part amazing is the soaring guitars going in the background. I think those guitar melodies add a really, really nice layer of intensity to this part and just work extremely well. And then the very ending, the final line, to live is to lie, so light the torch, and then a sharp cutoff, is just a really, really cool way to end the track. I think the whole band performed amazingly here, and after this is where we'll really start to see things pick up. Number 4, Fields of Bone. This is the first of, kind of the big boys of the album. Penny, my dog is in my room. She's begging for food. But I just gave you one. You don't need more. Say hi. It's a dog on my profile picture. But anyways, I like how Fields of Bone starts off soft with some electronic sounds. The vocals are also very soft at the beginning. That is until the pre-chorus comes in, which is one of the best transitions sonically on the entire album. It goes from soft to really, really catchy, nice, kind of metal vibes, obviously. But I think that is executed really well. The guitar and drums coming in so suddenly is one of the coolest things on the album, no doubt. And speaking of really cool things, the chorus is one of the catchiest on the entire record. Maybe the second catchiest, third catchiest, somewhere in there. I don't rank the choruses, but I think what makes it that is obviously the vocals are the main component of that, and his voice soaring up into the clouds with a really, really catchy vocal melody. And the instrumentals also synergize with it amazingly. But despite that amazing chorus, the bridge is still my favorite part. The second chorus ends off, and some really nice guitars come in, and then some gang vocals again come in. All the sinners are sent to rest, all their misery has to end, which is a really, really cool line to lead into the guitar solo, which, again, awesome guitar solo. And then the transition into the last chorus slows everything down, as I've already mentioned about 1,000 times in this video, that I really, really like that kind of style. And the ending of the song is also really nice with some more gang vocals coming in, which actually, I think there's more gang vocals in this album than I thought there were, but whatever. Some of the final lines, time as a soldier, keep marching closer, which is probably my favorite single lyric from the song. It's just so epic. It really embodies that kind of spirit that this army is preparing for battle. I feel like this being the song before Crimson Skies chronologically, I feel like this is them gearing up for the fight, and then Crimson Skies is the actual fight. But anyways, Fields of Bone is just a really, really catchy song, which is true for most of the songs on the album, honestly. It's one of my favorites, and I encourage you to listen to it. Alright, number 3, Shadows Rise. This is the first entry on this list that I would consider S tier. I'll make a video someday explaining my rating system for songs, but just know Shadows Rise is the first of the big, big boys. I really loved Shadows Die from Merchant Divine, so I think it's really, really nice that they decided to make a kind of child of that in Shadows Rise. It uses a lot of the same sounds, a lot of the same styles and stuff as Shadows Die did, starting in the intro. Builds suspense amazingly for, like almost a minute of the song, with some really nice violin, the clock ticking noise, the mysterious ticking noise, and some soft guitar, which is really cool, just like Shadows Die. When the first heavy part comes in, though, it's amazing. It's still in the intro and the instrumental part. The violin has this little melody, which is really nice, and it's actually above the guitar, which is something that you'll notice a lot in this track. The violin is kind of the main thing, not the guitar, which I will go into more later. The verses of Shadows Rise are my favorite verses on the album. Some of the best verses Black Veil Brides has ever put out, honestly. They're just super epic. They keep the energy really high. The melody's really nice, and especially the drums. I think this is one of CeCe's best tracks on the album. The drums are just incredible here and throughout the whole track. One of my favorite components of Shadows Rise, though, is its chorus. Not my exact favorite section, but it's probably my second favorite behind the bridge. The chorus is just amazing. The lyrics hit really hard for me, and they contrast a lot with Shadows Die. Whereas Shadows Die was kind of focusing on, going against the Church of Lies, Shadows Rise is going the opposite direction. It's this feeling, though, the church has failed you, which might sound like the same thing, but they're really different as someone who has experience. To go along with those lyrics, my God has given up on me, the chorus actually slows things down. It's the slower part of the song compared to the verses, which we're not really used to seeing, especially in rock. But I actually like this usage here because it fits with the lyrics amazingly, and also builds a little bit more of that epicness that the song has. The second verse is even more amazing than the first one, though, especially when you hit the point of the lyrics saying, "Oh, mother tongue, please comfort me," when the guitars become even heavier, which is just incredible. Always love to see Black Veil Brides getting heavier whenever possible. My favorite part, though, would have to be the bridge. As is usual with most music, bridges are amazing. This bridge is no exception. The suspense builds amazingly with the vocal section, ready to fall, ready to find what's left, and some other stuff after that I'm forgetting. But then the line at the end of that little section, "and now the shadows kill the light," into the violin solo. That's right, violin solo, not guitar solo. While there is guitar in the background there, and of course the amazing drums, the focus is actually on the violin. It comes in with that weird, I don't know what the word is because I'm not a music theory nerd, but no 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 no. That repetition of those three notes is just so cool. I wish bands did that more. I think it's used amazingly here. Jinx absolutely killed it. This is probably his strongest track on the record. I really love how the band opted to go with a violin and guitar solo instead of just a guitar solo because of, the contrast, or not the contrast, but the parallel with Shadows Die, in the bridge of Shadows Die where Fear came in and started doing his spoken word stuff. The focus of the instrumentals was on the violin, and that stays true here, and I think it's really cool that they just decided to keep putting all these parallels to Shadows Die in there, which is already one of my favorite Black Veil songs. And then, last but not least, the last chorus comes back in, climactic as ever. Just amazing usage of all these different instrumentals, and these vocals, he absolutely kills it, as always. And then the song fades out, returning to the intro, just like it did with Shadows Die, which is, again, the last parallel, and just absolutely sick. I think Shadows Rise is probably one of, if not the strongest drum tracks on the album. Shout out to CeCe, absolute beast. The quality is very consistent throughout the whole song. There's not a single part that I would call bad, or even not much worse than any of the other parts. Everything is very climactic, epic, amazing. Pretty much anything, any good adjective you can think of, Shadows Rise is that. Number 2, we are almost there, The Wicked One. I'd say The Wicked One is much different than Shadows Rise in its quality distribution, in that it's mostly carried by the chorus, but the other parts are still really good. There's not a single bad part of the song. Speaking of one of those good parts is the opening riff. It immediately comes in with this really awesome riff that's one of my favorites on the entire record. I love how they incorporate the electronic sounds in the background, again with the guitar, to lead into the verses. Now the verses are very good, not as good as Shadows Rises, of course, but they're still very solid. I really like their lyrics, especially in the second verse. The lyric, "Your heart is hollow and so is your head." That line is crazy. My mom heard that and she said, "Woo, savage." Don't ask. I don't know either. But the pre-chorus is even better. The O's into the chorus work surprisingly well as a transition. And the chorus, as I mentioned, is the best part of the song, and probably my second favorite chorus on the album, behind the number 1 spot, which you probably already know what it is. But anyways, every single element in this chorus goes together amazingly, especially the vocal harmonies. Some of the best harmonies on the entire record. The drums are also a great fit. Shout out CeCe, absolute beast. And here we actually have a surprising thing from The Wicked One. The bridge, it's still good, but it's probably the weakest part of the song in my opinion, just because it's so short and it's just a solo. I do like it, but it doesn't compare to the rest of the song in my opinion. Although I'll admit the violin in the transition to the last chorus is really great. I like how the intro riff returns for the outro as well, just brings everything full circle, which, as with Shadows Rise, I really like in most songs. And while the Wicked One is not as strong as Shadows Rise's story or atmosphere, this chorus just brings it high enough to secure the second place spot. Alright, the moment nobody has been waiting for, number one, Scarlet Cross. Scarlet Cross is my favorite Black Veil Bride song at the moment, and one of my top 10 favorite songs of all time. Yes, you heard me, top 10 ever. I even made a layout of it in Geometry Dash with the song, which is still unfinished and will probably never be finished, sadly. If you want to go check it out, it's on my channel. And I think Scarlet Cross was the perfect lead single for this record because it represents the album amazingly. Every single second of the track is just incredible. All the elements work together perfectly, and while it's not the most unique in the world by any means, it is a great master of its craft, being catchy while still being a little bit heavy and just everything working amazing and sounding great. The instrumental intro track, The Phantom Tomorrow, is a great way to start out the album, transitioning into Scarlet Cross. If you don't know what I mean, then I recommend you go listen to it because it is really cool. Speaking of transition into the beginning of the track, the opening riff is extremely epic, and it's a great intro back into Black Veil Brides after years of waiting for the album. Of course, we did have the Night EP with The Vengeance and Saints of the Blood, but we didn't have an album for like 3 years before this. So, anyways, now on to the verses. The main thing that I can say about the verses, aside from the vocals, which are great as usual, the background sounds, both the instruments, like the guitar and drums, and the electronic sounds, mostly the electronic stuff, honestly, is really nice. I like how midway through the verses, the instrumentals pick up, have some really nice chugging with the guitars and the drums, kind of intensify everything, and bring the verses up to their full potential. And then we have the pre-chorus, short pre-chorus that builds some really nice suspense, where it says the end is coming. I even made a pretty cool transition for that part in my Geometry Dash layout. Self-promotion. But anyways, the chorus of Scarlet Cross is Black Veil Bride's best chorus ever. Yep, best chorus ever from Black Veil Brides. One of my favorite choruses of any song, to be honest. The vocals and the melodies together are just incredible. Andy's soaring vocals, just amazing. The harmonies go incredibly hard. The guitars as well. Honestly, just anything you can think of about this chorus. Everything synergizes amazingly to make for one of my favorite choruses of all time. The second verse is even better than the first due to the additional background guitar in the second half of it, which is something that Black Veil Brides likes to do a lot in a lot of their second verses. And the second chorus introduces the O's at the end of the main chorus, which I don't generally love, but it works well enough here. Still probably the weakest part of the song, but I don't really mind it too much. But then after that is where I really want to focus on the bridge, which is just a guitar solo, but it is my favorite part of the song. Not just because of the shredding, but because of the shredding and the background guitars. It's one of my favorite solos Black Veil Brides has ever made. Maybe my favorite, honestly. It just all comes together in a way that you just have to see for yourself. I cannot explain it to you in words. Again, please listen to the album. I also really like the transition to the last chorus where everything slows down for a second. I've mentioned that like 10 times in this video already, but it still applies here. It goes seamlessly back into the chorus, which is just so cool. And the ending of Scarlet Cross is not my favorite ever, but it's still really cool, especially because of some of the guitars in the background and the sudden ending where Andy says, with the Scarlet Cross. Scarlet Cross, obviously, favorite Black Veil song. It's not my favorite by a wide margin, though. In the End and Bleeders are still very, very close behind, and I can see maybe in the future at some point one of those could take its spot. Well, there you have it, my ranking of Black Veil Bride's album, The Phantom Tomorrow. This album is my second favorite Black Veil album behind Wretched and Divine, and I think it has the catchiest choruses in all of Black Veil's discography. Also the best use of some electronic sounds. I like how they experimented with a lot of stuff, but I am sad to announce this will be my final Black Veil Brides album video, being that it's the final one that exists. But I will be coming out with a video about the songs in the band's EPs, The Night, Rebels, The Morning, and Bleeders EPs. I'll be ranking all those songs in my next video. I'm really happy to be getting back into YouTube. as I haven't been able to do that for like almost 6 months. Again, I'm not going to be reading from scripts anymore just because I don't have time to do it anymore. It is a little sad that I won't be able to be into YouTube as much as I once was, but I am still really excited to even have the opportunity to do it in the first place. This video is the 6th video in a series of 9 related to Black Veil Bride's music. Of course, I mentioned the EP's video, which is next, and then I will have a video ranking their albums and a video going over my top 20 songs of theirs. But with that said, that's all I really have to say. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, please leave a comment. It would really encourage me to know that somebody even made it to the end of this video. But with all that said, thank you for watching and have a nice day, guys.